Do you ever ask yourself, what if? What if something had happened? What if this had happened or that had happened? Today, I'm standing at Freedom Park. Just here is a monument to the Sabbath Day fight that was on December the 3rd, 1643, when Plymouth was triumphant against the oppressive forces of the king. It must be remembered, the Sabbath Day fight was not here. Some people refer to the Battle of Freedom Fields. That was something different. Long time ago, before the Civil War. We're not going to look at it today. The Sabbath Day fight occurred basically on the north side of the hill that comes up to Mount Gold Road. And Mount Gold Road is just over here. So we've now come across from the park, across the road, and we're now standing in Mount Gold Road. And in Mount Gold Road of today, just on the left here, is what we believe was the site of Lipson Fort. And Lipson Fort was where the Royalists were aiming. They wanted to take this fortification. But what would have happened if we had lost the Sabbath Day fight? What could have happened if we had lost the fight to keep control of this fortification here? What would have happened to Plymouth had the Royalists succeeded in occupying this fortification? Would Plymouth's history have been different? Let's ask Phil and see what he thinks about this what if.
That's an interesting concept, Steve. But our story actually begins down the hill and to the east of here. The story of the Sabbath Day fight begins here. To the north of here, this was all trees, hedgerows, and countryside, rural countryside. Prince Maurice sent a force of 1,000 men during the night of December the 2nd down behind these trees. Behind us would have been Lipson Creek, and up on the high ground, the Parliamentarian forts. Prince Maurice wanted to conceal his men here until the moment he was ready to attack. Previous to this, a force had moved down, 400 musketeers had moved down to the east and crossed Lipson Creek, ready to assault the Lara Point work. Shortly after midnight, this Lara Point work was overrun, and the Royalists settled in to hold it until daylight. By capturing the Lara Point work, the Royalists now had a lodgment and the outer line of Plymouth's defences. But what would they do with it? They needed to move further west towards Lipson Fort. That was their aim. That's what Prince Maurice wanted. So he sent another 1,000 men across the creek, further down from here, towards the east, where it was shallower and the ground opposite was lower. If you look here today, you can't see the Lipson Fort, but in 1643, none of this was here. The trees would have been gone. You would have seen the massive earthwork up there at Lipson Fort. No way could Prince Maurice have attacked it. The roads are too steep to go up. He must flank it. And this is what he started to do and partially succeeded. Lara Point work was under the Royalist control. Now, with these men moving across, they moved from east to west towards Lipsome Fort, where Colonel William Gould had assembled 1,000 men. We all know the story. Colonel Gould won the battle, and the Royalist attempt on Plymouth had failed. We all know the story that Plymouth won the Sabbath Day fight. But what if the town had failed? What if the defenders had lost the day? What would have happened to Plymouth?
You can see, Phil, how steep it is here.
Oh yes, I've walked up here just to get an idea, and you couldn't do it. If you were a soldier, you couldn't do this and fight a battle at the end of it. You'd have no advantage at all. In fact, you'd be disadvantaged. You'd be fired on from the fort, cannons would be firing at you, and muskets, and you just couldn't make headway up here. This would be just a muddy slope. And in December, it would be worse. It would be cold, slushy mud, and it would pull at your feet.
Back where we started, on the left, just about. Any second now.
Here, this own area.
On the left, Lipsome Fort, just here.
Yeah.
Which was where they were aiming.
Yes. In our what-if scenario, Lipsome Fort has fallen. The survivors fled, some down to the town, the inner line, south of here. Others would have retreated west, hopefully to seek sanctuary in the other forts of the outer line, Holywell, Magdalen, Pennycombe-Quick. This gives you an idea, the situation of December the 3rd, if the Royalists had won the battle. They captured the Lara Point work, they've captured Lipsome Fort. Now there's a significant break in the Roundhead lines here. The defenders fled back towards the town. They would have fled back towards the town, or they would have gone west towards Holywell, which could be easily attacked from the rear and the flank, and from the front, because I'm sure Prince Maurice would have sent more men over if his army had been successful here. He would have reinforced this line if he was more astute with the situation. He would have reinforced this line, sent guns over. He would have attacked the Magdalen Fort. Once Magdalen Fort fell, that was the keystone to Plymouth's outer line. He could concentrate the guns he captured and his own guns brought up across the Magdalen Ridge and set them up to fire on the inner line of the town, which is not far from here. That stone wall would not have lasted long. The defenders would have been hard-pressed to resist. There would be demoralisation within the town. People, as in Dartmouth and Exeter, they would be under fear that they were going to be captured by the King's army. Prince Maurice, successful at Lipsome and Holywell, would have moved on Magdalen Fort, now Plymouth High School for Girls, so you get an idea where it was. He would have brought his guns up, set up his headquarters on this side of the valley, and prepared to bombard Plymouth. He would have offered them another chance to surrender, as he did at Dartmouth. He brought his big guns up there. That was the turning point for the defenders. Once they opened up and tore the town's defences apart, the town quickly surrendered. This would have happened in Plymouth. Maurice would have given them an ultimatum. If they refused, which I'm sure they would have, there would be panic in the town once the guns opened fire. The stone walls that define the inner line of defences would have been pounded. The people in the town would fear for their lives and their property and probably flee towards the Barbican, where ships were anchor in the harbour. We still had a squadron of ships here. In fact, some of the soldiers that manned the defences on the outer line were taken from the ships. They were sailors, as were the guns, but these were now facing Plymouth. So we were in a dire situation. I believe myself that Plymouth would have accepted Prince Maurice's ultimatum to surrender. I would give them a couple of days, and that would have given the people with money and those in power and the church, the clergy, time to find a ship and get away, because they would not want to be captured. They were very anti-royalist, these Puritan ministers, and they would be some of the first to go. The people of Plymouth, fearful that their property would be destroyed, would be glad to surrender, because this never happened in Exeter and Dartmouth. When the royalists took over, they treated the normal people as people. They went about their daily duties, their jobs, carried on with their lives. But it was the officers who would have suffered, and the soldiers would have been disarmed, but the common soldiers would have been released, take a ship and go out. But with Devon now firmly under royalist control, Plymouth had no option. Prince Maurice had captured Exeter, Dartmouth, all the North Devon towns. So I believe Prince Maurice's ultimatum would be agreed to, and Plymouth would eventually surrender. Now, what effect would this have on the Civil War? Well, now the whole of the southwest, or Devon and Cornwall, almost all of Somerset and Dorset, Bristol, was under royalist control. Would it have made much difference to the outcome of the Civil War? No. I think it would have delayed the end, because the royalist forces in the West Country always had Plymouth behind them. They always had to have a force there to watch us. We could always strike out against the royalists, as we did throughout the Civil War. But at the end of the war, with Fairfax's New Model Army marching into the southwest, without Plymouth to worry about, the royalists could concentrate on trying to slow down the royalist advance. I think it would have done it by a couple of months at the most, but inevitably the New Model Army would have won the day.
But happily, that did not happen. Happily, Plymouth won. The townspeople won the day, and Plymouth played an important part in the freedom of democracy and to help make the parliamentary system we have today. Well done, Plymouth.